Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for being patient to wait for our panel discussion. And now, it goes back to this year. Let me recall my memory. May 7th, at Marriott Islamabad, we had the Pakistan Strategy Summit. And we did a similar panel discussion with title of the Blending Pakistan. That was May 7th. And this is kind of the second version. And Mr. Illango and Mr. Helmut here were also attending those panel discussions. And thank you, Elin-san and Richard-san and Irfan, to join us in our second editions. And as you can probably recall, May 7th this year, the election hasn't taken place and the previous government was still in power. So maybe what we have said over there before the general election and who are going to be the new government, maybe the statement we made was a little bit lukewarm. And hopefully after the elections, and this probably is 88th day of the new government. You have 12 days more for the 100 days, but nevertheless. And also this is going to be the similar theme because that lady and gentleman sitting here and I myself, whatever we are doing every day is constant battle against the perception gap of what is Pakistan really is and what is perceived in outside world, including our headquarters. Some have less problem because Irfan, Telenor CEO here, that Telenor is pretty much gung-ho in Pakistan, so maybe he has a little bit convincing effort, but people like me, or probably Helmut, has a little bit problem in convincing Pakistan is the land of opportunities. They start believing it, but there are always school of thought in headquarters and one CNN program damages whatever we've been doing. One example is 2 weeks back, Governor Osaka of Japan. Osaka is the second biggest city of the Japan. Governor Osaka came, and that was 2nd November. So he came to Islamabad, and the Japanese mass media reported not only Governor Osaka visiting Pakistan, but Pakistan is total chaos because of these religious, I don't like to go into detail. So that it looks like Pakistan, to the eye of Japanese, because of that incident, is 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days in the turmoil. And that is very bad. But nevertheless, okay, so I will not speak anymore. I would like to kind of ask everybody to speak what kind of the struggle they have and what is the success story they have on emitting the positive image in Pakistan. And maybe I go with Mr. Illango because I think you could also touch upon the recent announcement of this Doing Business Pakistan. I'm not going to say about IMF, but the Doing Business Pakistan rating improvement of Pakistan and more, if you like.
Thank you very much, Ando-san, and let me thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in today's panel. So, around 3 years ago, when I was asked by my management to move to Pakistan, the first book I was asked to read was Pakistan is a Hard Country. And when I look back over the 3 years, there are elements of the book which are true, which we saw on November 2nd, but there are many parts of Pakistan which actually is not very well told to the world. And this is something that even General Zubair highlighted about the tourism. Wherever I go in Pakistan, when I see the tourism potential, why isn't this being sufficiently told to the rest of the world? And even when it is told, then you come up against the visa regime which is extremely restrictive, and therefore you're unable to get anybody down here. So I think, in my view, it's a question of the refurbishing of the image needs to continually happen. Yes, there have been unfortunate circumstances from the past that still seems to be vivid in the minds of many people. But there are many positive aspects of Pakistan which actually the government, the private sector, and the broader stakeholders can actually take to the rest of the world. And you spoke about ease of doing business. And Naim is seated here. He was the architect of the 11-point increase we saw in the ratings that just came out a few weeks ago. That's a very positive jump. Many think, oh, it's a very small jump, 11 places to 136. Yes, but where you were, 147 out of 190, were not in the best place. At least you're beginning to move upward. And the current government has ambitions and aspirations to get below 100 as soon as the country can. And to me, ease of doing business worldwide has become a sort of a reimaging of nations. For example, the neighboring country, India, went up by 52 because the Prime Minister of India was determined to ensure that India is being seen by the investment community globally as a place to invest in. So there are great examples not only from India, we know from Russia, we know from Thailand, we know from Malaysia, we know from China. So you have to pick up all these global indicators that are out there, and Pakistan has to make a concerted effort and make the best for itself. Let me pause here.
Thank you. I think that this is worthwhile applauding Naim Zamindar, if you can stand up. I mean that not only in Pakistan, but in every country, when the new government comes, I mean that the general procedure is to negate whatever the previous government does. But I think that the ease of doing business, I mean that the ranking improvement, I think we should give a credit to previous government. Anyway, that's my view. But I hope everybody agrees. So if you agree, please. So Helmut.
Yeah. Good afternoon. And again, thank you very much, Ando, for your introductory words. We had this session earlier in this year, as you said, and there it was when I reflected on coming to Pakistan, and some of my colleagues, one of them I see just now, they know that 3 years ago when I came in, before I was asked to come, I had no real idea of Pakistan except what you just said. It is a very dangerous ground to be, and there's hardly things that you can do, and whenever you come, you are faced with the situation that you're most likely shot when you exit the airport. And then I came here, and unlike many others, I also brought my family. And I have to say that over the last 3 years, it was a very positive experience. Obviously, you have some ups and downs, that is in every country the same, but it was very positive, and this is a reflection that I also try to give back to my fellow countrymen, but also, as we are a multinational company, also to the other visitors are coming. And we have now seen that over the last 3 years, each year we had more than 500 foreigners coming into the country based on our activities. We have many expats now being deployed on various sites. And we see a very positive development that is happening also from a perception that we see from the headquarters. The Siemens Pakistan used to be a very big organization. It went through a difficult time, and it went through a restructuring process, but I think we have now shown over the last couple of years that this trend can be turned around. The management team that was before me did an excellent job in making sure that we have now a basis of really seeing the growth that is coming. And this is something that we reflect also to the other businessmen of Germany and other countries. We had, similar to you, we had a German delegation in the week of the 2nd of November, that you met them with the ambassador together, coming to Pakistan, which a number of high-level industry representatives where they're talking about setting up manufacturing here, setting up development and research and development phases in fields like pharmaceutical, but also IT areas, which are areas where Pakistan really can become a very competitive, export-oriented nation. And that is also reflected in, I think, what the new government is trying to do in attracting companies to set up and to really grow their manufacturing base with the aim of an export-oriented economy. So companies like Siemens, we are very keen to support this, and other companies as well. When we see some of the challenges that we have, that is, obviously this is also here. Siemens in Pakistan has 99% locals working. So I'm more or less the only expert besides the project-related experts that are coming in and going out very quickly. So we have a great team. On the other hand, we also see that a large group of very talented young people are actually moving out of Pakistan. They see their future in Australia and other places. And that is one of the things where you see now growth coming, you need to retain and attract this talent. And when more and more companies are setting up their operations here, they are dependent on this type of talent. And that is one of the things which I and my team is really trying hard to make sure that people see there is a future here. Also for them to grow and to see career, and we offer them these career possibilities. So that is one of the things which I can only highlight here. This is a country which has opportunities, which can offer opportunities, also for people that want to come back. And we see this also now, where a lot of people have family ties, where parents are getting older, and they see that there is a chance for them to come back and really do a change also for the society and for the good of the society. So that's how I have experienced over the last 3 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Elin-san, you are only diplomat.
Yes.
In the group, so let's not be so diplomatic about whatever you say. I mean that, please.
Are you trying to get me into trouble?
Be blunt and frank on your experience in Pakistan and the struggle, and yes, please.
Sure. Well, I have been here in Pakistan for just over a year now, and a little bit like my colleague Helmut, I had never really thought about working in Pakistan before I took up this role. I applied for it, I wanted it, but I didn't really know what to expect. I'd heard a lot, and I'd heard probably some of the stories that are told externally. And I think the thing that has struck me so forcibly as someone who's come to live here is quite how far some of those perceptions are completely different from the reality that one sees day to day. And for me, as someone who is a champion and supporter of Pakistan, not least in my role as Director of Trade, so my job is to increase the amount of trade and business that is done between the UK and Pakistan, and I'm passionate about that. Partly because I'm a firm advocate and passionate believer in the future of Pakistan, and the future of Pakistan, which is one that is peaceful, prosperous, stable, democratic. That's the future of Pakistan that I believe in, and that as a UK representative, it's my job to help invest in and create. And I think I would say a general point, I would echo the points about I guess matching some of the policies to the welcoming and warmth of the people. I think making it easy to travel here, to welcome here. I think the British Backpackers Association called Pakistan its sort of top destination for 2018 because of the amazing natural beauty, the stunning locations, and the amazing hospitality that can be found here. And I think one of the best ways of showing that openness is to make it easy for people to come here, to visit, to come as tourists and to do business. So that's why it's so heartening to see the progress on ease of doing business. And I hope that progress will continue under this government and go up and up and up. And I think from the business perspective, I will talk in general terms, but I think there is a perception gap. I think it is true that in terms of security, the picture has changed significantly in the past 4 or 5 years, but we're dealing with a lag in perception. But I also think that some of those challenges on ease of doing business, the predictability of tax regimes, the structural barriers that can sometimes make it feel more difficult to get things done here, those are still areas that I think progress has been made on, and that I hope progress will continue to be made on. Because I'd finally point out that one of the things that gives me hope and optimism every day in Pakistan is the young people that I meet. The sheer wealth of talent in young people here is amazing. I would particularly emphasize the wealth of talent of women. And for me, that's one of the strongest indicators for the potential future of Pakistan. I'll just conclude with one little anecdote. Recently, a couple of British pilots were passing through Karachi as part of a voyage they were making in a very small plane, and they're traveling from the UK to New Zealand. I think they're still on the journey. They stopped off in Pakistan, in Karachi, and we held an event with them, with students here, to talk about careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And talking to those pilots afterwards, they were blown away by the quality of questions that they got. They said that the standard of questions and the insight that they got from university and school students in the audience on that day was higher than any they'd seen in their journey so far. That, to me, shows you the potential that Pakistan has. And I think now the challenge is to create the environment and the policies that unleash that potential and see Pakistan in 20, 30 years' time booming and playing its rightful role on the world stage.
So I promised with Richard that I will put you in the last. So Irfan, he is country head of Telenor Pakistan, I think. Definitely the biggest Norwegian investment in Pakistan.
Yes,
and also he is the president of Overseas Chamber of Commerce, which is true representation of foreign investors in Pakistan. So Irfan, from the two aspects,
absolutely.
You can speak.
Thanks, Anderson. I just realized that I'm the only Pakistani on the panel, so I will be biased. But let me also use some fact-based insights. Wearing my Overseas Chamber hat as president, and Overseas Chamber is typically the first point of contact for any investor who's looking into exploring the opportunity in Pakistan. So we got a lot of interest, and I must say that in the recent years, the interest has gone up manifold. And when you analyze, I mean, there's no other reason than, if you look at that macro level, there are not many countries of our market size who are left. 220 million people, over 100 million people who are young, under age of 35, a booming middle class, about 80 million people who would like to actually change their lives, who would like to consume. So all the fundamental parameters actually are on our side. And that is actually one of the key reasons why Pakistan all of a sudden is on radar of nations, potential investors across various industries. And then we also, so Overseas Chamber is a chamber of about 190 top multinationals operating in Pakistan. And these companies are not just in Pakistan, they are also present almost everywhere in the world. And when you look at their returns last 10 years and compare those returns with the global averages, Pakistan actually outshine in terms of the revenue growth, in terms of the profitability. So that fact itself simply shows that the market has huge and the country has huge potential. And as a result, the people who are present in Pakistan, they're not shying away from investing more. Our members alone have invested $2.7 billion in 2017. That is primarily reinvestment into expansion of the businesses. This is more or less in line with all the total FDI coming into Pakistan. So that means the people who are present on ground, they are bullish, they are upbeat, and this is based on a solid track record, what they saw in form of tangible returns. But I agree with the fellow panelists when it comes to perception of the country. Obviously, we have to work together actually to improve that. Overseas Chamber also do constant pulse checks from time to time. 3-4 years ago, our biggest challenge for businesses were law and order and security situation. The second biggest was the power outage. These two doesn't come as the top issue in the latest survey, which is a great change if you think of it, and a great change from a business viewpoint. Now, which comes at top is our taxation policies, some coercive actions, and that has to be, obviously, everyone sitting in the room can relate to that. But this is something which is fixable. In my view, a lot easier than the other two challenges which I mentioned. Also, if I talk about my own company, Telenor, we take very proud that we are sort of one of the largest European investors in Pakistan. So far, we invested $3.5 billion in this market, in a business which is obviously very capital intense. And Telenor is present in many countries around the world. If I can tell you that our outlook on Pakistan, on this market, is much better than our outlook in any other market globally. And that's the reason why we keep on investing. And one of the reasons why we decided to come, and we've been here since 2004, at that time, there were many things which we looked at, and one of the key things was predictable policy framework. We were lucky at the time that, the telecom policy of 2004 was quite forward-looking, quite advanced in terms of, but the challenge which you're facing is primarily on the enforcement piece of it. The policy framework, I would still say largely is, I won't call it best in class, but it's not really lagging behind. But the challenge is at the enforcement of it. Challenges, taxation I mentioned, but also interprovincial coordination, some of those irritants which keeps the investors away. And as Illango mentioned, ease of doing business, I think, is one key parameter which we need to work together with the government to make sure that we can remove some of those irritants, and then we can really unleash the opportunity potential in this market, which is our youth, which is actually our female. If you look at the Pakistan in 60s and compare with some of the other comparable economies like Philippines or Thailand or South Korea for that matter, in those years we were not behind those. Actually, we were ahead of some of those. And among many other factors, one of the things which we have missed out is lack of inclusion of our female workforce. Today, is female participation to country's GDP is less than 20%. That's not in line with our population, which is more or less equal. So that has to change. But I think technology and digitization can play a big role in actually uplifting the country.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Among those who sits on the stage here, Richard, you are maybe the new kids on the block. You came like 10 months back, was it?
Well, after almost a year in Pakistan, I consider myself.
I'm sorry. That we got to know each other like 10 months back.
Pakistani.
So, yeah, but okay. And you are being CEO of Pakistan Stock Exchange, and you have huge challenge. You have to bring the institutional foreign investors invest more into Pakistan stock market, and you must be facing a lot of challenges. And you achieved something also. So if you could share that with everybody.
Challenge, yes, but the opportunity is at least as great as the challenge. Like other foreigners on this panel, I have really two perspectives to offer on branding Pakistan for foreigners, because this is, I believe, what I'm expected to talk about. I obviously, although I've been here for a year, almost a year, and as I said, with each passing day, I feel more and more Pakistani. I wouldn't say less and less Canadian. I'll always be a Canadian, but I feel more and more part of this community as time goes by and as I integrate. But I'd like to talk more about my perspective on foreign investors, looking at Pakistan as an investment destination. And then I would say quite simply that Pakistan has, I don't know about branding, but certainly no perception problem, because foreign investors are playing a very active role in Pakistan stock market. They own around 30% of the available float of our listed companies. Public float is owned by foreigners. And in fact, in the case of PSX, which is also a listed company, half of our public float is held by foreigners. And in fact, they would like to buy more. If SACP, I don't know if SACP is in the audience, but if SCCP would allow, foreigners would buy more than 50% of the public float of PSX. We talk to these foreign investors on a regular basis. Not a week goes by without talking to them on conference calls. They come to Pakistan. We participate in investor conferences, and they see tremendous opportunity. They see Pakistan as a great investment destination. And there's a paradox, because I think we've said it very often. Pakistan equities are very attractively priced. And the paradox is, because they've been so attractively priced for quite a long time, it's a well-kept secret that foreigners have been making extraordinary returns over the past 5 and 10 years investing on Pakistan stock market, because contrary to local investors who tend to take a very short-term view on the market, they have a long-term view. And those who have invested for the long term in Pakistan have made extraordinary returns. We're one of the best performing emerging markets in the world, both over the past 5 years and over the past 10 years. Thanks to thought leadership like people, companies like Angro, Telenor, many listed companies on PSX. This is why they come here. Of course, there's ebb and flow. Foreign investors sometimes tend to leave a country, or at least partly leave a country, and this is one of the things that we're living through in Pakistan now. There's the global trend away from emerging markets, and Pakistan has been partly affected by that recently. But this is by no means a statement by foreigners that they don't believe in Pakistan, they don't believe in the long-term story of Pakistan. Quite to the contrary. They recognize the huge potential in the same way I did when I decided to come here. They recognize the huge potential in Pakistan. Of course, they know that Pakistan is a country also of great challenges. But again, challenge is equal to opportunity. It's common strategy for a late speaker in a panel to echo the comments of those who spoke before. So I'd like to echo the comments of Elin when she said that investors require I think the term you use is predictability of the tax regime. If I was allowed to send one message to the government of Pakistan, and we have a very constructive dialogue with this government, very encouraged. I think one key to attracting not only foreign investors but also domestic investors is predictability of the tax regime.
Yeah.
Finally, the last comment I would like to echo has to do with my own perspective on Pakistan. I've been here almost for a year, and I've traveled across the country, the south, to Lahore, to Islamabad. I've been to places in northern Pakistan where the vast majority of Pakistanis have never been, and I'd like to echo your comments. This is a country, and I don't say this to please my Pakistani hosts, this is a country of unique beauty, especially the northern region where I spent 2 weeks with my daughter. Extraordinary reception by everybody. I couldn't dream of a better place as a tourist, a foreign tourist, to go on vacation. But there again, one comment for Pakistan authorities. It could be easier to obtain a travel visa as a tourist to Pakistan. And do yourself a favor, make it easier to obtain a travel visa to Pakistan.
Yeah. One supplementary comment, explanation, what Richard said, is it's very strange. One thing I find very strange in Pakistan is people like us who work in Pakistan so many years with work visa needs NOC to go to Hunza. And it takes 3 months, 4 months.
It took me
And
4 months.
one foreigners sitting in outside of Pakistan, never been to Pakistan, and apply for the tourist visa, get the tourist visa in 1 week, and come and freely visit Hunza and Gilgit and whatever. And actually, people like Richard or I, or Illango for that matter, or Helmut, are supposed to be the more stronger advocate. If we go to Hunza, we see those tourist sites and we speak to many people, but we are not allowed because we need to apply for that 3 months. Oh, even then, we apply. It took 4 months to get my NOC, and my wife went to this Skardu and everywhere. But nevertheless, there is one thing that government of Pakistan, I think, is it any column in the east of doing whatever in that things? Anyway, Illango.
No, unfortunately, the visa regime is not part of ease of doing business. The NOCs are not only for the northern areas, even to go to the cantonment areas, I need an NOC. So, for example, if a friend invites me for dinner, if I don't have an NOC, I can't go to this person's house for dinner. That's how the NOCs operate here. It's actually, in a way, it also, for people like me, I can't sort of go out there and tell people out in Washington and elsewhere, no, you come to Pakistan, you can freely travel around. This is where the big challenge is, that whole image makeover needs to happen and begins with your embassies located everywhere. They have to be seen more hospitable. And with digitization happening, even my own country, Sri Lanka, with all its difficulties, has an online visa system. I know many of you have taken advantage of it. I think it's time for Pakistan to actually introduce an online visa system. This is what we're advocating for the broader ease of doing business, is 3 areas where I think a resolute political stand should be taken. One is no human interface, second is no paperwork, and third is go digital. If you do this, I think Pakistan can move up the ease of doing business ranking very fast. I was very impressed with the Chief Strategy Officer from Engro, where he spoke about all the disruptive ways in which private sector is bringing out entrepreneurship. I think even in the policy environment that's now run by government, I think there has to be a lot of disruptive policies. And earlier on, we heard about Pakistan's huge potential, huge prospects. At the World Bank, we've looked at Pakistan over the next 30 years. I know there is a session tomorrow of Pakistan at 2047. We call our analysis Pakistan at 100. There are 2 pathways we see for Pakistan. One is a very prosperous pathway. If you're able to sort of grow between 5 and 8% over the next so many decades, you will get to an upper middle income country where the per capita incomes would be $7,000, $8,000. And for that, one important aspect that needs quick resolution, political consensus, is the size of the country in terms of population. Can Pakistan be 400 million people in 2047, and can it sustain such a large population? Versus, if you continue as what you're doing with 4 to 5% growth rate, that's what we've seen over the last 70 years, you will end up with a per capita income in 2047 as almost what it is today. That means for a young population, which is mostly under 30, someone who is 15 or 25, then they are 45 and 55. The welfare gains, the prosperity is almost going to be what it is today. So just imagine the whole frustration, the lack of productivity that you're going to get out of these people. So I think this is the time for Pakistan to look bold and take some serious reforms that actually help to double investments in this country. Currently, investment rates are around 15% to GDP. India, Bangladesh all average between 25 and 30%, and that explains why they're growing at 7%. The total factor productivity, which stood at 2 in the 80s, is now down to less than 1. It has to double up. Today, Pakistan's labor output in this region is among the lowest. So there are many areas in which Pakistan, it's not only ease of doing business, it's also about your skills, about the way human capital is coming together, the formation of it, and the expansion, all need to come together. So I really hope between now and 2030 is what I consider disrupt as much as you want, accelerate as much as you want, amplify whatever you can, because I think if you do that by 2042, you would be an upper middle income country. Otherwise, if you continue the way you're going, the differential between Pakistan and other neighboring countries is only going to grow and widen. So it's absolutely critical that we bring in as much as disruption as possible in the policy space over the next 5 years. And this is what we really want to support the federal government and the provincial governments to be able to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. Because of the time constraint, we won't be able to do the Q&A, but anybody from the panelists would like to speak? Something which you have missed? Huh? Oh, Majid-san, okay, one question. Please identify yourself and make one question. I mean that.
My name is Majid Aziz, President Employees Federation of Pakistan. Today we had an excellent speech by the General and others, and with our friends sitting here. You see, what has happened is, when we talk about FDI, we hear, and I got some figures that I want to quote, from 17 to 18, from USA, there was a 200% increase in FDI. From UK, ma'am, 50%. Japan, Ando-san, you have to work hard, is about naka ne. Germany, that was in deficit, from 1.23 million, it went to about 35 million. So they're doing a good job. Unfortunately, before I go there, Italy gone down a little bit, but France from 35 million went to 6.77 million. Now these figures, although it seemed very exciting, would have seemed very exciting maybe a couple of years ago. But what happened when we talked about CPAC, and then we were so casually, we are floating figures of 40 billion, 50 billion, 60 billion, not million, and there's a dollars, the almighty dollar. So we have gotten used to the 50 billion and 60 billion, so when 200% from UK, 50% UK, and they come, we should be very happy about it. There's a progress rather than going back. So,
Majid-san, question please, question.
Please, just 20 seconds. My question is how to channelize all this into the future technology and AI and other things, rather than just buying or investing. And I'm not talking about the stock exchange. This is the actual FDI. And my second point is I need some advice from you. See, one thing that I am is not a quitter. Whatever I want, I go after it full force. For 2 years, I've been trying to get an organization in Japan to come to Pakistan for their conference. They go to Cambodia, they go to Vietnam, they go to Timbuktu, everywhere. But whenever we talk of Pakistan, they say travel advisory. So the 4 gentlemen of you, I'm going there next week to Mr. Ando's land. How do I convince them that yes, come into Pakistan? You all said good, beautiful things. But how do I convince them that, and there are only 3 Japanese and there were 27 other countries who regularly come here. Sorry to take the time, but this is the best way I can get good advice from people who matter. Thank you, Ando-san.
Thank you. So the second part of the question, travel advisory, let's discuss separately. But the first question is about how to bring in all these IT and AI and technologies. I think, Helmut, maybe you are the best person to answer the first question, if you remember the first question. Okay.
The first question was how to bring more foreign direct investment. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the German government, although sometimes that seems to be the case. I mean, obviously we try, and that's why I said we had a number of, we had 2 German delegations over the span of a month now in Pakistan. We have now ongoing discussions also in Germany. We have been now working very closely with Euler Hermes and other banks and financing institutions to ease up funds. that can contribute. And on the other hand, not only Germany, again, I come back multinational, representing Siemens, for example, here. We talk very closely with our UK colleagues, which are very active now, are becoming very active now. We had the first time people over here. We have invested in Lahore, especially in the software side, Engo Digital, you mentioned it. We have 150 software engineers that are purely doing research and development in Lahore for a global scale. So there we see a lot of potential coming. We are, since 1994, we have investment in Rausch power plant, 34%. And this is something that we are also showing as examples for other investors. Look at some of the automotive manufacturers, VW. They've just signed with Premier Auto Group, if you follow the press release, setting up a car manufacturing facility here, which would be the first German manufacturing that is happening besides the Japanese that are doing it. So it's starting now to come. And as it was said before, the improvement in the security situation has helped tremendously. Also, the travel advisory from the German government, for example, from other European countries, has also been now reduced. So that also has been able now to encourage business delegations to come. And you will see this, that more and more is now happening, and that obviously will then also contribute to more direct inflow of investment.
Thank you very much. So, I think that the time is now running out, so I think I would like to conclude by saying that, that across the room we have confidence and the consensus that Pakistan is full of talent and full of resources, and Pakistan is surely the land of opportunity. But talent needs to be groomed, has to give them proper job, so that they can perform. And resources, you need to utilize it. Opportunity, you have to capture it. I think it is about time that, because Pakistan, everybody has a potential. Thank you very much.